Salesforce earnings. Let me guess, 20x% growth, and they just nailed their numbers, right?
Yeah, I think it was largely a winner. And right now, winners and losers are decided by the after hours market action when earnings are announced. Sometimes you see an earnings and you go, oh, because for instance, I believe they kind of trimmed their revenue forecast a little bit for the year, but they guided up on their profit. And this is, by the way, the particular market response to that is such an indicator of where we're at in this current economic cycle. People right now want cash flow companies, they want profit companies, and they want robust, earnings that are predictable. Companies like Salesforce are about as predictable as earnings can be. You're up there with like a Oracle, maybe in terms of having predictable revenue. No matter what the economy does, nobody's getting rid of their database, no one's getting rid of their ERP, and nobody's getting rid of their CRM. And so that was a really important thing to see. Now, the growth, really good, really stable, Pat, 24%. And we put an earnings note out about this. And look, company was up year on year. They were above estimates. They were strong on profitability. They raised their profit guidance for the full year. And they're growing in the right places. And so I literally could pre-write my earnings notes, Pat, with sales and service clouds growing at about 20%, maybe a little more, a little less. But these are now, I said this is a little bit of a shift, an impasse for Salesforce. They went for a long time to sort of being this cool, fast growth SaaS company to now being this mature, incumbent company that sort of leads its space, that has disruptors trying to come up and eat its lunch, but yet it kind of continues to grow at a really healthy clip. That's the good news. That's actually the really good news. Now, the other interesting news is over the last few years, the company's been very aggressive and inorganic. So you've seen the Slack acquisition, a lot of question marks on that. I still think it can be a very big and very successful acquisition, although I'd like to see more integration to compete with Teams more directly. I still feel like it's sort of living a little bit off on its own. I've heard, some of the Slack first pitches, and I think it's got the trajectory, but it's not on par yet. So that's going to be something that the company's going to need to zero in on and focus on. But platform's growing 55%. It's a $1.4 billion business for on the quarter. And this is the area that's really kind of exciting to watch. You hear whether it's Zoom or Salesforce, all these SaaS companies trying to play platform. And so, the Hyperforce platform is starting to take off with MuleSoft and with Slack and these integrations. And by the way, I think we're like 2 to 3 years away from platform being its biggest segment.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. Now, I'll give you something maybe a little bit to the market maybe could, be a little bit bummed out about. MuleSoft and Tableau, 2 huge bets for the company. Actually, the slow growth right now, their whole data segment was the slowest growing. Now, I would have expected those to be faster growth. So if I'm kind of trying to nitpick something I don't love is I'd like to see, they're at 15%. And they're not large. They're the smallest segment, and they're growing the slowest. These big or inorganic bets, Pat, and you and I have had some very long, hardy discussions about Salesforce running out of sort of organic growth and needing to get inorganic. And so when you do that, you want to see it grow faster. So now we're seeing Slack, MuleSoft, Tableau. Are they growing fast enough? Or are they complementary enough to scale platforms, scale these data segments? Those particular areas are kind of to be determined. Last thing I'll say is that this company is benefiting by its segmentation. It's now got it's presented itself as a $284 billion addressable market by 26 over the next 3 or 4 years, with about a 13% category growth rate. So it's not a hyper growth category anymore. And that's kind of what I was talking about this inflection point between being this fast growth company and being sort of this really stable, mature SaaS company that serves, the vast majority of enterprises in one way or another. So overall, a good performance. Like I said, definitely not a negative given, we've had to kind of talk about some tougher performances, but that guidance down on revenue is something to keep an eye on.
Hey, did you get a sense on the platform and other if most of that growth was from Slack?
No, it wasn't spelled out clearly. And in fact, I don't. I think there's still some maturity in how Slack is going to be rolled into the platform. They have announced a series of Slack first initiatives and sales, marketing services, and I do think that is going to be the future. I really think that I believe Mark Benioff calls it the digital HQ or the digital headquarters. And by the way, we've got a lot of debates. Right? Elon Musk is saying, "Come back to the office, or you're fired." We are not in a world that has fully accepted hybrid work as the thing. We're in a world where we're somewhat divided on that topic. But the integration of CRM, Slack, your ERPs, the power, I'm saying the power platform in the sense of Teams, those integrations to create your epicenter of work is what I think Slack has to become in order to compete with Microsoft. Microsoft is ahead of the game right now, and that's got to put some pressure. The acquisition of Slack was a bold move, but unless they find a way to make that happen, I'm not quite sure you're going to ever fully be able to figure out how to justify that $27 billion spend.
It was definitely a defensive play related to Teams,
but it could go offensive.
And they had to find a way to capture that data of people and customers who were chatting back and forth and getting stuff done. What I'm wondering is how long can Salesforce go without getting into HCM, SCM, all the different types of things that, let's say, Oracle and Microsoft, and at least in the mid-market, NetSuite and Zoho do, because they pretty much are a suite, right? It's all pulled together, and in a happy world of frictionless data sharing, your IT shop could leverage, let's say, if you have an Oracle SCM or HCM, and then you're all in on the Salesforce platform with everything else, you can make it happen, but it certainly isn't seamless, and it's pretty much up to the Oracles and the Microsofts to provide those APIs that can be sucked into Salesforce and get some use out of it. Yeah, I'm actually going to start researching Slack more. It's pretty interesting, and no, not because I'm into watching train wrecks or things like that, but really have an interest for how they're going to use this. And be interesting with the valuations going down, Daniel, on all of enterprise SaaS out there. Does Salesforce make a play to go end to end on SaaS, where Salesforce can be the operating system of the company?
It's interesting, and I just do a really quick boomerang on this one. But you've got the Workday side, or in the case of Oracle, they have the SCM, HCM, stack. Microsoft has a supply chain cloud, the cloud, and they haven't really come out yet as Salesforce and said they're going to do this. So right now, you would do a Workday, Salesforce would be like American
integration, to be
or SAP, ERP and Salesforce. And I think that's been the typical thing. The question is that a logical extension to the business that could help it scale and grow? And I think the answer is probably, but I think it's hard. I mean, those markets are HCM, and by the way, that might be more achievable, by the way. But the ERP side of the house, oh man, that is a sticky, difficult business to get into.
Yeah, and it's dug in there like a tick, right? Yeah. And it's really a 2-horse race right now with actually probably a more of a 3-horse race. But yeah, it's tough. By the way, I don't mind boomerangs at all. I mean, this is you and I having conversations. We're not broadcasting. So
we are broadcasting our conversation.